and then clamp that down.
Okay, I've had many roles at the company. My current role is Director of Strategic Projects, predominantly working on the building move for the Routeco HQ. Lots of legal protracted conversations with the developers, a test of tenacity and resilience, that's for sure. We've obviously got a purpose-built designed building for office and a UK CDC or central distribution warehouse. And that's obviously going to be based 2 kilometres from our current site. So this is a bespoke building which we'll be leasing from a developer for at least 20 years and hopefully 25 to 30 years. Okay, the routes I took before starting at Routeco was totally non-electronic related. When I was at school, I originally wanted to be a motorcycle policeman, but I didn't want to leave home and go and live in London because I was wearing glasses at the time. And then the other option was a carpenter, and anybody who knows me knows that I'm not practically minded with my hands. So I ended up working at British Timken. If you're from Northampton, you'll know Timkins from many years ago, no longer there unfortunately, supplying roller bearings to the automotive industry as an apprentice. So I thought this is an easy way into working life, £40 a week, half of it going to the board and lodgings to my mum. Done a 4-year apprenticeship. Basically, the first 2 years was just general, so it's mechanical and electrical engineering. And then I focused on tool making for the following 2 years. At that point in time, I had a choice of working 3 shifts as a tool maker or going to college and being paid to go to college by Timken to do a higher national diploma in electrical and mechanical engineering, which I chose the latter option. After 2 years, I thought that's good, I'll get a proper job now. And then Timkins were not recruiting, they were having a spate of redundancies, so it led me to look further afield. At that time, I was with a partner outside of the home address, so I moved 20 miles south to Milton Keynes and just basically ended up getting a job at Harlan Simon Control Systems, going back to the sort of late 80s, early 90s. And I took on again, didn't want to commit to a proper job, so I took a 2-year graduate engineering role, which basically see me go through all departments in the business, a bit like the sales development plans that we do today. Unfortunately, I ended up in accounts for 3 months, and I realised straight away that accounts was not where I wanted to be going forward. So, waiting for a job to appear, then I ended up taking up an internal sales job, working for the paper converting machinery division of Harlan Simon. They were known in the print industry predominantly, but the paper converting was an offshoot of that. Doing internal contract project bids for multi-million-pound contracts. So that's where I sort of first got into a sales environment. And then unfortunately the company was also a bit of a trait here, but the company was also going through spates of redundancies every 6 months. And I thought it's time to fly and leave the sinking ship before I go down with it. A few interviews before I eventually ended up an interview at Routeco in basically May 1993, many moons ago. I've been here more than half my lifetime. I think generally would I do it again in a heartbeat if I could exclude supply chain issues and COVID, which obviously affected many people. That was probably the most challenging period of working here. But actually, in terms of the career development, what I've done, what I've seen, what I've achieved, I'd do it in a heartbeat. I guess the pivotal moments really refer back to no opportunities where I was. Harlan Simon was a big customer of Routeco, so they were known to me, obviously, and just having feelers in the market. I see them as being a fast-growing company, and I think I always remember the first interview with Colin Spring and Mike Oldbrook. So some people may know those names from years gone by. Asking me about ABB bar and shaft contactors, which is not something that you hear on a conversation piece today in the sales call. I just happened to be working on a project at Harlan Simon quoting these, so I know all about them. So I think that got me to the first external sales role at Routeco. An expansion on a sales role into an external role, which I hadn't done before. I think obviously I was quite taken by the interview process and the warm welcome that I had in the old Winter Hill days by Jane Wilson. At that time it was a new venture. I was mid-20s, my first child was about to be born, so it was a whole new sort of opportunity and a new journey to explore. Back in '93, I joined as an external sales engineer. Green behind the ears, as I used to call myself, sales engineer's role. Then I had an opportunity at the time to take on the area sales management position. Again, that was probably a couple of years in the making. And then opportunity came again, which I went for and grasped and was fortunate to get for the regional sales manager's role, which in them days was when we was really going from sort of 8 to 10 branches to 19 branches in terms of opening new sites, moving across the UK at a vast rate of knots, and there was 3 RSMs at the time, myself, Nick and Kelvin. So that was 2 or 3 years in the RSM role. And then there was an opportunity to go into what was known in the old days as national accounts, or corporate accounts as it formerly became, which is obviously selling electrical basket goods to end user clients. So people like Nestle, people like Procter & Gamble. So that was probably a good 7-8 years, I'd say, within corporate national accounts. And then I got involved in a project which was introducing barcode guns in the warehouse from a sales perspective for Tony Usher, who was the ops director at the time. Tony wanted me to get involved to make sure that what we're doing as a business, we didn't forget that the sales and the customer piece. So the operation and the IT was a given. This was a sort of a third eye on the project. And as I quite often say, I either did something right or something very wrong, because straight after that project, I moved to the operations side working for Tony. So bye-bye sales and hello operations. Then obviously Tony then retired, so I moved up to ops director, which soon then became supply chain director, but it was the same role, but supply chain was more of a job title that Sonopar associated with, which was purchasing, logistics, and obviously all the bits in between. So obviously that was predominantly what I've done, and obviously then in the last 18 months moved to director of strategic projects, really focusing on that new build. But I think it was definitely a good opportunity for me, and pleased I made that move. And hopefully I've been able to give back to the business in terms of advice and support and understanding of what people are trying to achieve. More often than not, I probably have experienced how to do it or how not to do it, which is also part of the learning curve. I think the proudest accomplishment is, from my point of view, it's a great question, because actually I think there's lots and lots of small wins, but when you actually try and pick out a big win, I think the big win for me is maintaining and building our biggest account relationship. Very tortuous, very challenging. We delivered on service and expectation, and we continue to see great relationships and results with that account today. Multi-million pound turnover business, which has been consistent for many years, but probably the biggest year was the 5 million turnover. And that role was actually in a sales environment as well as an operations environment. So even though I moved to ops 12 years ago, and I think the other achievement is actually just challenging myself. I'm not a natural outgoing individual, but when you're put in a position where you represent the business, at senior Sonopar events or customer events or networking events, actually I get a bit of a strange kick out of being that forefront of the business, and not the sort of second, third row back type individual that I would normally be in the business. So just put yourself in a bit of a out there, a bit uncomfortable, but actually realise that it's not as scary as you think. You get a rush, and you know that's a new threshold, so you can step another half a step further out of your comfort zone thereafter. Yeah, but also I think given the opportunity, by your direct line manager or the company, to have the confidence to put you in that position. When given the opportunity to look after the biggest account in the Routeco UK history, it's quite a challenge and quite a weight on the shoulders to make sure that continues to deliver. When they're looking for different things every 6 months. So I think again, just fortunate to get the opportunity, seize it, be successful, and then move on. I think most of them were overcome. Obviously, one of the biggest challenges I've currently got, as you're aware, is that living with Parkinson's for the last 7 years does have an impact on your neurological condition. So obviously it makes things quite difficult. As I've always described to people, living with Parkinson's is like being semi-drunk in some respects, and trying to sort of focus doubly hard to do things and write emails and remember things, and you have to change the process in which way you work. So I think that's actually so finding a way to continue, because a lot of people that are in the local support group with Parkinson's tend to work 2 to 3, maybe 4 years after diagnosis. So to be here 7 years on has been, in my head, has been a great achievement. But also acknowledging that actually, this is going to go one way, and it's not the way that I want to finish the career with Routeco. I think the other big challenge definitely was COVID, because having Parkinson's, I was at high risk. So the government says stay at home, and as a supply chain director, that's obviously a business operation that's having goods coming in and going out the door. It's very difficult to manage that department and that function when you're locked away from home. I think again, probably the other biggest challenge has been supply chain issues globally in the sort of early 2020, 2022, sort of 23 period. That was a real challenge, because that was totally out of your control ultimately. But actually, how do you find ways in which you can get as much control around the peripherals as best you can? So again, working with the business to get more stock in, maximise the space we use in the warehouse, by basically increasing the stock value by 3-fold in 6 to 8 months. But the space didn't increase by anything. So that's probably been the big 2 challenges. And I think over the last couple of years, there's been a test of patience and tenacity with working on this new project building, which has taken 2 years to get to where we are today, which is lease signed. Now we've got to build it. So it's over to my colleagues to deliver the project. I know I'll be always on the other end of a phone if I need to, and I'm looking forward to the invite to the open day in about 2 years' time. 100% supported by the business, both in terms of, if you look at the career changes over the last 32 years, opportunities were given. So, the opportunity was offered or available to me to apply for. So obviously I've seized those and moved on. And obviously I think actually to get an all-rounded, vision from a sales and an ops perspective, I think I'd recommend that to anybody in the business, to get a good understanding as to the functions of the departments you're not normally involved with, but actually may impact you in some way, either directly or indirectly, as part of your main role. And I think in terms of the support that the company's offered me during the diagnosis, and obviously post-diagnosis particularly, has been second to none. Whether it's occupational health, whether it's been supported with reducing hours, looking at workload, and obviously that's where we got to where we are today, is just by gradually nibbling away at those responsibilities to focus on less things. Although being involved in many things still, but your ultimate responsibility is on less direct activities. And I'm glad to say that the company will continue to support myself and the Milton Keynes Parkinson Support Group going forward with the use of the venue, the facilities, which is ideal for our meetups monthly and our presentation talks and speakers. So that's really good to actually have that connection still, because if you cut me in half, I've got green blood running through me, which says the word Routeco. I think people have said that to me in the past. Never said no to a challenge. Put a lot on the line for the business. Working through a young family 2 times over, and seeing the business develop and grow. But actually being there, even in years gone by, having those 3 o'clock in the morning call outs for customers when nobody else was about to respond to a out of hours service call. I've done a few of those in my time. So. One of the wins as part of the corporate accounts, which was an OEM account, which is Saw Machine Dynamics in Newcastle, was a fantastic win, because it was our biggest OEM account for a number of years. Not involved in the account now, but I know it's been traded. They do underwater sort of vessels which lay cables across the oceans. Quite an interesting. We're doing full kits of parts. The whole process change and how we handled that within the business, both from a process perspective and a operational perspective was a challenge. The pricing, the price maintenance, the cataloguing, etc. But the story behind that was we came back from a successful contract award day in Newcastle when we secured the contract. We were travelling down via the Peterborough line train station, and we got so carried away with how excited we were, we didn't actually get off the train until literally 2 minutes or 2 seconds too late after the train pulled away from Peterborough and ended up not far from the outskirts of London, where we had to wait for a return train to get back to Peterborough. So that was probably a great win, great achievement, but also has its own story and memory with it in terms of we left at 4 in the morning to get up there. And we probably didn't get home until 3 the following morning after we had the train journey from hell. As a sales engineer, I used to set myself a challenge to always leave a customer with a reason to go back. No matter how big or small that reason was, agreed with the customer, it's always an opportunity to get the door open again and then challenge, ask the next question. I think one of the wins I like to think I've achieved in the operational side, so away from sales, is with the keep it simple strategy. So when I first was given the task of running the warehouse and the CDC in Milton Keynes, it was quite disjointed. But we thought it was, because we always see ourselves as a sales organisation rather than a sales/logistics operation, which is, I'm glad to say, is now seen equally as important. And we made some very basic changes in terms of how we held stock, where we held stock, the racking, the part numbering, etc. So some very simple changes which actually made great efficiency results and wins afterwards. You didn't have to be have a master's degree in supply chain and warehouse operations. It's just basically keep it simple. Don't make it overcomplicated. Unfortunately, not at Routeco. I hate to say, I think I've served my 32 years and. I still have a connection. Obviously, I've got some good friends, that have built up over the years at Routeco. So, the eye is going to not be taken off the ball in terms of how well the business does. And as I said, I'll be at the Christmas party, I'll be at the open day, and I'm sure I'll be here many times with the Parkinson's group meetings. So we'll see a few faces, but really just to focus on myself now. Medically, I'm playing the medical bingo card. I've had 3 strikes on the card. 2 are cancer related. So I'm just going through my second trounce of cancer treatment, which starts next week. So I think actually it's made me realise I've given as much as I can give, and I want to only give positives. And I don't want to be in a position where I can't continue to give to the same level. So I think it's right for me, right for the business, and right for others to get step up and be given the challenges I've been given in the previous 30 years. So my plan is remain as healthy as I can be, spend more time with the wife, who I've seen probably less than I have Routeco's front door in the last 25 years, and really go to my happy place, which is a caravan site not too far outside of Milton Keynes, and a bit of fishing and just chill. I'd say probably not so much known, but more a case of have the confidence. Or I suppose you could say knowing that I had the confidence to try different things, rather than experiencing that sort of slippery journey in terms of the unknown. I think actually, I think, and don't be afraid to challenge. I think it took me a while to challenge not just myself, but obviously others, the business, how we were doing things, but also be respectful of the fact that expect to be challenged back for what you're responsible for. So I think actually if I look back, say if I'd have had the confidence to challenge more and know that you're not going to be hung, drawn and quartered, for asking an awkward question in an awkward meeting, then it's just how you say it, not what you say. I think is the key thing. I would say there's two people that I would pick out on. You know, they've both been my direct line directors over the years. One was Paul Barsby, former sales director for Routeco. Those that know him, an interesting character, you know, and certainly taught me to work hard, but also, you know, play, you know, hard-ish as well. So it's not just about work. Taught me some very simple things like, you know, don't overreact. You know, your emotions can take control of you know, your physical state. Don't respond. So he always used to say to me, ring him up on an afternoon and say, Paul, I've had this real difficult email, you know, challenging, you know, probably almost emotionally upsetting email to deal with. The first reaction is go to keyboard warrior and respond. He would always say, write the email, sleep on it, read it in the morning, and if you still feel the same, then send it. I don't think I ever sent the email the following morning that I'd written the day before without making some modifications to it, because actually on reflection you think, yeah, there's always you know, a reason for why things are taken the way they are. And I think there's a danger, particularly with emails, that actually you know, the emotion is not shown, whereas a, you know, face-to-face discussion or a phone call, you do get that sort of extra arrangement of understanding. So I think that would be one thing with Paul, and obviously you're very supportive in terms of the Siemens account. And I was also say Tony Usher, former supply chain and ops director. You know, he showed me that actually being blue, being detailed, is not a bad thing. You know, there are a few of us around. You know, we're not all red characters or green or yellow. So from the personality traits, you know, actually it does require a mix of people to you know, to perform and drive a business forward, rather than those, you know, sort of red zone driven individuals. There's got to be someone there with a balance to sort of just to, again, come back to the challenging point, challenge the you know, the status quo, and just ask those questions. The company supported me to achieve my goals by obviously putting the right people in place to take over the task of the new project. So it will be a challenge for the individuals left. You know, I'm leaving the project too. You know, Mark Crawford and Mark Couchman, Simon and Charlie have got a big task on their hands. But again, I think, you know, as long as the business continues to support them in terms of backfilling some of their functionality and their responsibilities, you know, they're more than capable of delivering, you know, the project as we envisage it to look like at the end of the program. As long as the company doesn't expect them to carry on doing the full day job, plus these extra responsibilities, because these extra responsibilities, when we moved to Knoll Hill, the current site, there was a team of directors, three of the five directors at the time, just basically left the day-to-day business and focused on the project, you know, with developers, with architects, and everything else. So obviously you need to have that break. You can't be all things to all people. So you need to make sure they've got the bandwidth to deliver the project. Otherwise, there's potential for slippage in terms of time and obviously more importantly cost. I think embrace change. I think there's always, some people have that roadblock where change is not good, but actually accept that, you know, okay, it's not always good, but if it's not always good, you reverse it and you do a U-turn and you revert back to where you are. But I think you know, certainly embrace technologies. You know, if there's an 18-year-old today coming in, I look at my children, you know, around that age, you know, the things they do with AI and things they do with, you know, just technology. You know, it's nice to still learn things from those 18-year-olds of today, but also, you know, if I'd have known, have the confidence to embrace it early and not get dragged along like a Neanderthal on a few things. Just to engage with technologies, because it's one thing's for sure, that's changing faster than people's ages. Yeah.